Caribbean Weather Bulletin. Widespread heavy rain. Warnings for rough seas and flash floods from east to west. Ladies and gentlemen, the Caribbean region is preparing to experience a complex and severe weather phase since the beginning of November. On the regional weather map, two major weather systems are operating simultaneously. A tropical wave moving from the Atlantic into the eastern Caribbean, and a large-scale atmospheric disturbance forming in the western Caribbean, where the monsoon trough is beginning to lift northward. Although there are no signs yet of a clearly defined tropical cyclone, the combination of these two systems is forecast to produce widespread heavy rain, rough seas, and dangerous gusty winds from the Lesser Antilles to the Central American coastline in the coming days. At the same time, from the north, a strong cold air mass is spreading into the Gulf of Mexico, creating unusual atmospheric interactions that are making weather across the region extremely unstable. At present, according to the latest satellite images and observational data, a thick band of thunderstorms is moving rapidly across the eastern Caribbean, carrying large amounts of moisture from the sea deep inland. Many island nations such as Trinidad and Tobago, Grenada, St. Vincent, St. Lucia, and Barbados have recorded prolonged heavy rains from last night into this morning, accompanied by strong gusts of 25 to 35 miles per hour. In Barbados, the National Meteorological Agency has issued warnings for flash floods and localized landslides, as accumulated rainfall may reach 50 to 75 mm, with some places exceeding 100 mm within 24 hours. Coastal roads have reported localized flooding, especially in low-lying areas in the island's southwest. Sea waves are also increasing rapidly, reaching 2 to 3 meters, making maritime activities, fishing, and sea transport difficult. In the Leeward Islands, including Dominica, Antigua, and Barbuda, St. Kitts and Nevis, and Anguilla, scattered showers have appeared since this morning, but are forecast to intensify this evening and tonight as the center of the tropical wave moves closer. This system, although moving quickly, carries a very wide moisture field. Therefore, many islands will face repeated bursts of heavy rain through the end of Saturday. In Guadeloupe and Martinique, rain has already become heavier this afternoon and is expected to peak within the next 24 hours. Regional meteorological agencies advise residents living on hillsides, in valleys, or along small rivers to be highly alert for sudden flash floods, while fishermen should suspend going to sea during this period of rough conditions. Meanwhile, in the Bahamas, weather conditions are somewhat different. A weak moisture trough is active over the northern and central Bahamas, bringing light showers but not enough to form an area of prolonged heavy rain. However, east-southeasterly winds are maintaining high humidity, resulting in overcast skies, low clouds, and slight sea roughness. In New Providence, Andros, Grand Bahama, and Eleuthera, scattered showers with localized thunderstorms and lightning may be observed. Meanwhile, in Puerto Rico and the U.S. Virgin Islands, weather conditions have also become noteworthy as large waves and rip currents continue to be warned. Waves may reach 2.5 to 3 meters, posing danger to residents and tourists swimming or using small boats. Offshore east-southeasterly winds of force 5, gusting to force 6, are making the sea markedly rough. In Bermuda, the outer edge of the tropical wave is approaching the island, bringing a bout of heavy rain and strong gusts expected on Saturday. This system is moving quickly to the northeast, so impacts will last only about 12-18 hours, but could still cause localized heavy rain and dangerous gusts. The local meteorological agency advises residents to limit travel on Saturday night and Sunday morning. From the west, a monsoonal disturbance is forming and gradually strengthening in the western Caribbean, where abundant moisture from the warm waters around Honduras, Nicaragua, and Costa Rica is concentrated. According to forecasts by meteorological centers from Sunday into early next week, this monsoon trough will intensify, forming a broad rain area covering much of Central America. Countries such as Honduras, Nicaragua, Belize, Costa Rica, Panama, and the southern part of the Yucatan Peninsula will face prolonged heavy rain for many days. Rainfall is expected to commonly reach 150-300 millimeters, with some places exceeding 400 millimeters over 4 to 5 days. Caribbean coastal areas and mountainous regions will face high risks of severe flooding, flash floods, and landslides, especially in steep terrains already saturated from previous rains. As for Jamaica, the weekend weather remains fairly dry. However, starting Monday, rainfall is expected to increase rapidly. A dense band of thunderstorms will cover the western and southern halves of the island, particularly around Montego Bay and Negril, which previously suffered heavy damage from Hurricane Melissa. If the rain persists, localized flooding and landslides in highland areas may well occur. The Cayman Islands and the Gulf of Honduras are also within the direct impact zone of this monsoon trough, with heavy rain likely from the weekend and continuing throughout early next week. Meteorological departments across the region advise residents to closely monitor the latest forecasts and warnings and to prepare response plans for flooding, landslides, and rough seas. Another notable factor affecting the entire region is a strong cold air mass from Canada and the United States moving southward. It is expected that early next week this cold air will spread down into the Gulf of Mexico and the Western Caribbean, reversing wind directions over the sea to north-northeasterly, while bringing in a cold, dry air mass. The interaction between the moist southwesterly monsoon flow and the cold air from the north will create a strong convergent zone right over the Western Caribbean, preventing the rain there from dissipating quickly and potentially sustaining it for many consecutive days. Current meteorological models show that from Tuesday to Thursday next week, northerly winds will be strong over the Western Caribbean. Wind speeds will remain around 25-30 miles per hour, possibly stronger around the Cayman Islands, Jamaica, Belize, and Honduras. Temperatures in the northern Yucatan Peninsula are expected to drop to about 17-19 degrees, 4 to 5 degrees below the multi-year average. Experts note that although the likelihood of a tropical cyclone forming is low due to strong wind shear from the cold air, the result of this atmospheric interaction will be prolonged rain and violent sea conditions, hazards no less dangerous than a storm. In Cuba, the Bahamas, and Turks and Caicos, rain will gradually decrease from Sunday, though the sea will remain choppy, unfavorable for small vessels. In the Eastern Caribbean, from Sunday onward, rain will start to ease quickly, and the weather will improve, with occasional sunny spells. However, the windward islands such as Trinidad and Tobago, Grenada, and St. Vincent will still have scattered showers into early next week. For maritime areas, the entire Caribbean is forecast to have dangerous conditions for small boats and coastal fishing vessels. Waves may reach 2 to 3 meters, even over 3.5 meters in the southeastern Caribbean. Strong rip currents in Puerto Rico, the U.S. Virgin Islands, Barbados, and St. Lucia will be particularly dangerous for swimmers. As the cold air spreads south, strong northerly winds of force 6 to 7 will raise sea levels in the Cayman, Honduras, and Belize areas, making sea travel extremely risky. Local authorities have advised fishermen to temporarily stop going to sea, to secure boats firmly at safe docks, and to frequently monitor updated weather bulletins for timely response. Ladies and gentlemen, although the Caribbean's main hurricane season has passed, November is always an unpredictable period due to interactions between cold air masses from the north and tropical monsoon flows from the south. This interaction causes unusual heavy rain events that may occur at any time. This phenomenon not only poses dangers at sea but also directly affects the livelihoods of millions across the region, from fishermen and farmers to coastal tourism. Therefore, proactively updating weather information, adhering to official advisories, and being ready with flood response plans are of utmost importance. International meteorological experts assess that this heavy rain event may last until mid-next week, and if the monsoon convergent zone maintains a stable axis, accumulated rainfall over the next 7 days could reach 300 to 400 millimeters in some Caribbean coastal areas of Central America. In particular, the eastern coast of Honduras and northern Nicaragua may become the heaviest rain centers, while higher elevation areas in Belize and Costa Rica will face a serious risk of landslides. Regional humanitarian and disaster prevention organizations are ready with emergency support plans if rainfall exceeds warning thresholds. Ladies and gentlemen, Caribbean weather is entering a particularly sensitive transition season, where the boundary between the monsoon and cold air constantly creates unpredictable scenarios. Even without storm signals, the large amounts of moisture and thermal energy over the sea remain potentially risky factors. Residents of the islands and coastal areas need to be highly vigilant against flash floods, inundation, and rough seas, and avoid traveling through deep water areas or rivers and streams during heavy rain. For fishermen, the most important advice at this time is not to go to sea when strong wind and high wave warnings are in effect. Carefully check anchors, lines, and buoy systems, and coordinate closely with rescue forces in emergencies. Ladies and gentlemen, today's Caribbean Weather Bulletin is brought to you by Media Mundo, the regional center for forecasting and weather updates for the Caribbean. We will continue to closely monitor the evolution of the monsoon trough and the advancing cold air mass to deliver the most accurate and timely information. If you find this bulletin useful, please click like, subscribe to the channel, and turn on notifications to receive the latest updates. Any images, information, and videos documenting local weather can be sent to the program's email address to share with the community. Thank you for your attention. We wish you peace and safety amid the upcoming heavy rains and rough seas. See you in the next bulletin on Weather Today, Caribbean Weather, where we accompany you through every change of nature.